Bills Mafia, we need to talk, because there is a lot happening in Buffalo right now, and none of it is small. We're talking about three completely separate storylines swirling around this franchise at the exact same time, and each one is significant enough to dominate a news cycle on its own. One story is about brand new faces fighting for their careers before a single preseason snap has even been played. Another story is about a former high draft pick whose seat in Buffalo might be getting hotter by the day. And the third story has absolutely nothing to do with wins, losses, or roster battles. It's about the history of this entire franchise, and a decision that has people talking well beyond the borders of Western New York. So settle in, because we're covering all three of these stories today, and by the time we're done, you're going to have some very strong opinions of your own about where this team is headed. Let's get into it. Story 1. The defense is getting a total reboot, and the pressure is already on. Let's start with the question that's been hanging over this entire organization all offseason. Can the Buffalo defense finally play well enough to help push this team over the championship hump? We already know exactly what Josh Allen brings to the table every single Sunday. Nobody questions this offense's ability to put points on the scoreboard. But if Buffalo is finally going to break through and get over that final hurdle, the defense has to take a genuine leap forward in 2026. And that's exactly why this upcoming training camp feels so unbelievably important. This wasn't a small offseason tune-up for the defensive side of the ball. Buffalo completely reshaped this unit from top to bottom. There's a brand new defensive coordinator running the show in Jim Leonhard, a completely new defensive philosophy, and an entirely new system that every single player in that room has to learn from scratch, regardless of how many years of tenure they have in Buffalo. That means returning veterans no longer have guaranteed roster spots, and every newcomer walking through the door has to prove immediately that they belong. According to NFL insider Albert Breer, there are 4 defensive newcomers who have more riding on this summer than anyone else on the roster, and honestly, it's tough to argue with that list. Let's start with Bradley Chubb. This could genuinely end up being one of the biggest, most defining seasons of his entire career. Buffalo didn't bring him in just to be another body rushing the passer. They brought him in because they need someone capable of closing out football games and consistently getting after opposing quarterbacks when it matters most. Jim Leonhard has already publicly expressed his excitement, largely because Chubb has spent the majority of his career playing in defensive systems very similar to what Buffalo is now installing. That's an enormous head start. Instead of burning months learning a brand new set of responsibilities from scratch, Chubb gets to focus almost entirely on doing what he's always done best: attacking the quarterback. And it's not just the scheme fit that's encouraging. The leadership Chubb is already showing off the field is turning heads too. During the offseason break, he personally invited rookie edge rusher TJ Parker down to train alongside him in South Florida. That is exactly the kind of veteran mentorship this defense has been missing. Chubb is currently expected to start opposite Greg Rousseau, but nothing is being handed to anyone on this coaching staff. Real competition is the expectation at every single position. If Chubb wants to finally become the difference maker Bills fans have been waiting years for, this summer needs to erase every lingering doubt. Next up is one of the most genuinely fascinating additions Buffalo made all offseason, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Let's be honest about something right up front. Everybody around the league already knows exactly who this guy is. He's loud, he's emotional. He plays with an edge and a swagger that not everyone loves. That personality has occasionally created friction during his career. But so far, every single thing coming out of one Bills drive about him has been overwhelmingly positive. Jim Leonhard reportedly couldn't stop talking about the sheer energy Gardner-Johnson brings into the building every single day. And Josh Allen himself gave fans another reason for excitement. After Gardner-Johnson intercepted one of his passes during minicamp, Allen described him as the loudest guy in the entire room and someone who competes at full speed on every single snap. No exceptions. That's precisely the kind of mentality this defense has been missing at times over the past few seasons. When you add a player who's already won a Super Bowl ring and has multiple 6-interception seasons on his resume, you're not just adding raw talent, you're adding confidence, attitude, and a guy who doesn't shrink in the biggest moments. Right now, Gardner-Johnson is the favorite to start alongside Cole Bishop, but as always, training camp will have the final say. Then there's a name flying almost completely under the radar compared to everyone else in this defensive overhaul: Geno Stone. Since signing with Buffalo, there simply hasn't been nearly as much buzz surrounding him. But maybe that quiet is exactly why he ends up surprising a lot of people once the season actually kicks off. Stone has started 36 consecutive games and hasn't missed a single contest across 4 straight seasons, a level of durability that's genuinely rare at his position. Back in 2023, with Baltimore, he recorded 7 interceptions in a single season, numbers that speak for themselves without needing much additional context. When he signed with Buffalo, Stone made a point of saying that Bills fans were getting someone who competes every single day, shows up in the right place at the right time, and leads by example rather than just talking about it. The three-way competition between Stone, Gardner-Johnson, and even Damar Hamlin could quietly turn into one of the single biggest position battles of the entire training camp. And finally, rounding out this group of newcomers under pressure, rookie edge rusher TJ Parker. Every rookie walks into the league carrying pressure, but Parker's specific situation feels especially significant given how much the coaching staff is banking on him. Buffalo drafted him because they genuinely believe he can become part of the long-term future of this pass rush. Jim Leonhard has said the coaching staff identified Parker very early in the draft process and fell in love with both his mentality and his work ethic. And then, veteran defensive tackle Ed Oliver handed Parker one of the highest possible compliments during minicamp, calling him a straight-up cheat code. That's serious praise coming from an established veteran who doesn't hand out compliments lightly. Of course, everything changes once the pads actually come on in full contact training camp. Right now, Greg Rousseau and Bradley Chubb are penciled in as the starters, with Michael Hogt also expected to see significant snaps, likely leaving Parker as the 4th edge rusher on the depth chart entering camp. But if he flashes anything close to the form he showed during his final season at Clemson, where he racked up 11 sacks, don't be shocked if his role expands a lot faster than anyone currently expects. Step back and look at the full picture here, and this first story tells you something important about where Buffalo's head is at. This organization isn't simply hoping the defense gets better on its own. They're actively betting on it, with a new coaching staff, new leadership voices, new personalities, young talent trying to prove itself, and established veterans trying to earn trust all over again. Every single practice over the coming weeks is going to matter, because if these 4 newcomers live up to expectations, this defense could finally become the unit Bills Mafia has been begging for across several disappointing seasons. Story 2. Is Keon Coleman's time in Buffalo already running out? Now let's shift to the story that's probably created the biggest, most heated debate among Bills fans over the last several days. Should Buffalo seriously consider moving on from Keon Coleman before the season even kicks off? Just hearing that question out loud feels strange, honestly, because it really wasn't that long ago that so many fans believed Coleman could become one of Josh Allen's premier targets for years to come. He had the size, the athleticism, the highlight reel catches, and every single physical tool you could possibly ask for from a young receiver. But here's the uncomfortable truth about the NFL. Potential doesn't last forever. At some point, actual production has to start matching the talent, and according to one recent report making the rounds, Buffalo shouldn't wait around any longer to find out if that day is coming. The argument is refreshingly straightforward. If another team out there is still willing to give up draft capital for Coleman right now, Buffalo should seriously consider making that deal before his trade value drops even further. The team mentioned most often in these rumors is the Tennessee Titans. And to be clear, this isn't some blockbuster, headline-grabbing trade proposal. It's actually a fairly modest deal on paper. The suggestion floating around is that Tennessee could send Buffalo a 5th-round pick in the 2027 NFL Draft, while the Bills would send back Coleman along with possibly a 7th-round pick to help balance out the trade. Your first reaction to hearing that might understandably be, a 5th-round pick? That's really it. But then you look at where Coleman's stock actually sits right now, and the modest return starts to make more sense. His second season was a genuine disappointment. His production never came close to matching what Buffalo expected from a 2nd-round investment, and there were also some off-field concerns that entered the conversation over the course of the year. Statistically, he averaged just 10.6 yards per reception, ranking near the very bottom among Buffalo pass catchers who saw regular targets throughout the season. For a player drafted with such high expectations attached to his name, that simply isn't good enough production. The report behind these trade rumors also raises a fair point worth considering. Maybe Buffalo just isn't the right environment for Coleman anymore. Sometimes a young player genuinely needs a fresh start, a different coaching staff, a different offensive system, a completely new environment to reset in. We've seen plenty of players around the league revive stalled careers after a change of scenery, so it's far from impossible to imagine Coleman finding real success somewhere else. Another potential landing spot mentioned in these discussions is the Las Vegas Raiders, who are still building around rookie quarterback Fernando Mendoza. While their current receiving group has some intriguing names already, adding a player with Coleman's physical upside could be viewed as a genuinely low-risk gamble on their end, especially if it only costs them a 6th-round pick in 2027. But here's where this entire conversation gets a lot more interesting than a simple trade rumor. This isn't only about giving up on Keon Coleman. It's also about what Buffalo could do with that freed-up roster spot. This front office has a real, proven track record of finding legitimate talent in the later rounds of the draft. Just look at Khalil Shakir, a 5th-round selection who's developed into one of the single most dependable playmakers on this entire offense. Or Christian Benford, a 6th-round pick who's turned into one of the team's most reliable defensive backs. Even Dorian Strong showed genuine promise as a 6th-round rookie before an unfortunate neck injury will unfortunately keep him sidelined for the entire 2026 season. That track record gives general manager Brandon Beane real credibility anytime someone questions the value of a late-round pick on this roster. And the trade report even specifically points to rookie wide receiver Skylar Bell as someone who could directly benefit from Coleman's departure, having already made a strong impression during the offseason program, with people both inside and outside the organization believing he could be ready to contribute a lot sooner than most expected. If that's genuinely true, Buffalo eventually has to make a real choice. Do you keep waiting patiently for Coleman to finally become the player everyone once hoped he'd be? Or do you clear a path for younger players who might already be ready to help this team win games right now? This is genuinely one of the toughest conversations Bills Mafia can have, because nobody wants to be the fan who admits a 2nd-round investment simply might not pan out. Every fan base wants to believe the breakout season is right around the corner, and everybody loves rooting for a redemption arc. But this coaching staff has one job above everything else: build the best possible roster to win a Super Bowl. They're not handing out playing time based on draft status or draft round. They're going to play whichever players give them the best realistic chance to win football games, period. Training camp is going to tell us a lot here. If Coleman comes out and silences every single doubter, this entire conversation quietly disappears. But if he struggles again while a player like Skylar Bell continues turning heads throughout camp, the pressure on this front office to make a genuinely difficult roster decision is only going to keep growing. Don't be shocked if this particular storyline follows the Bills all the way through the entire preseason. Story 3. A decision about the past that has nothing to do with football. While the future of one specific player is dominating headlines, our final story today isn't about the future at all. It's about the past of this entire franchise, and a decision that has sparked a completely different kind of conversation across Bills Mafia and beyond. As the Bills prepare to move into the new Highmark Stadium, the organization has officially decided that OJ Simpson will not be included among the historical displays celebrating the team's legacy. According to the team, the new stadium will feature a year-round gathering space dedicated to honoring Buffalo Bills history, complete with displays recognizing many of the franchise's greatest players and most memorable moments. But there is going to be one very noticeable, very deliberate omission: OJ Simpson. Bills President of Business Operations Pete Gwelly explained that after careful, extended consideration, the organization ultimately decided Simpson simply doesn't fit the vision they have for the new stadium and the family-friendly environment they're working to build there. That is a significant decision, especially when you remember that Simpson wasn't just another name who passed through this franchise at some point. From a purely football standpoint, his accomplishments are genuinely undeniable. Buffalo selected him with the very first overall pick in the entire 1969 NFL Draft. He spent 9 seasons wearing a Bills uniform. In 1973, he became the very first running back in NFL history to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season, a milestone that still carries enormous weight in football history circles today. He was a 5-time first-team All-Pro, a Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee, and by any football measure, one of the greatest players to ever put on a Buffalo Bills jersey. His name was actually the very first one placed on the Bills Wall of Fame when that honor was originally created back in 1980. So purely from an on-field perspective, there's genuinely no debate about what he accomplished during his playing career. But that's only one half of his story. The events that followed his playing career fundamentally changed how much of the world viewed him from that point forward. The murder trial in the 1990s became one of the most closely watched, most significant legal cases in modern American history. And while Simpson was found not guilty in the criminal trial, a subsequent civil trial found him liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Those events continued to shape public perception of him for decades afterward. After Simpson passed away in 2024, the broader question of how sports organizations should handle and remember his football legacy never really went away, and it's clearly been on the minds of Bills executives as they've planned out this new stadium. Now, the organization has made its position clear. Buffalo has chosen to separate its celebration of team history from one of its most statistically accomplished players, because the organization ultimately believes his overall legacy no longer represents the image they want associated with their brand new home. And honestly, this is exactly the kind of conversation where reasonable people are always going to land in different places. Some fans genuinely believe football achievements should be evaluated completely separately from everything that happened afterward in someone's life. Others believe it's simply impossible, and maybe even inappropriate, to try separating the player from the person entirely. But no matter where you personally land on that spectrum, one thing does appear certain. This wasn't a decision the organization made lightly or quickly. Reports indicate team officials spent months working through different possibilities internally before ultimately reaching this final conclusion. There's a real argument to be made for why this became such a complicated, sensitive topic for the organization to navigate. As football fans, we naturally love celebrating the history of our favorite teams in as complete a way as possible. But organizations also have a responsibility to think carefully about what they want future generations of fans to see and experience the moment they walk through those stadium gates. And regardless of whether individual fans agree or disagree with the final decision, it serves as a clear reminder that the Bills aren't only trying to build a championship-caliber football team, they're also trying to build a franchise that reflects the specific values and image they want to represent moving forward into this new era. Bringing it all together, step back and look at everything covered today, and it's genuinely remarkable how many significant storylines are swirling around this franchise before training camp has even officially begun. On one side, you've got four defensive newcomers stepping into what could become the defining summer of their respective careers. If players like Bradley Chubb, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Geno Stone, and T.J. Parker all live up to expectations, this defense could finally transform into the difference-maker Bills fans have been desperately waiting for. Then there's the genuine uncertainty hanging over Keon Coleman's future. Whether he silences the critics on the field or Buffalo ultimately decides to move on, it remains one of the single biggest roster questions facing this team right now. And finally, there's the organization's deliberate decision regarding OJ Simpson's place, or lack thereof, in the new stadium. A clear reminder that this franchise isn't only thinking about wins and losses, but also carefully shaping how its complete history will be remembered for generations to come. What continues to give real confidence through all of this noise is that the Bills organization still has one singular, unwavering goal: bringing a Lombardi trophy to Buffalo. Every roster decision, every coaching adjustment, and every difficult conversation the front office navigates is ultimately in service of giving this team the best possible chance to finally get over the hump. Nothing is guaranteed in this league, as every fan base learns the hard way eventually. But if this defense truly comes together under Jim Leonhard, if the young talent across this roster keeps developing the way the front office is betting on, and if this organization continues making difficult but necessary decisions when they matter most, there is a real, legitimate case that this team still has everything it needs to compete for a championship this season. So now it's your turn, Bills Mafia. Which of today's three stories do you think matters most heading into the season? Are you genuinely fired up about these new defensive additions? Or do you think the hype is getting ahead of the actual results? Should Buffalo hold on to Keon Coleman and continue betting on his potential? Or is it time to move on while there's still a trade market for him? And where do you personally land on the organization's decision regarding OJ Simpson's place in the new stadium? Drop every one of your thoughts down in the comments below, because we know this fan base never holds back when it comes to conversations like these. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, make sure to leave a like. And if you're one of those fans who genuinely believes Buffalo can finally reach that Super Bowl, go ahead and subscribe to join this community from the very beginning. Thanks so much for watching Bills Mafia. Stay safe, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you right back here in the next one. Go Bills!